I'm on the advisory board of the ALFA project, which means that my role is to advise a project on any technical work they are doing or on operational issues that they encounter. So what's so special about the ALFA project is that they are not only looking at the detection part, but they are also looking at other issues like how to detect whether the threat is, whether it's really a threat or not, and about landing site prediction. So they're going to predict where a malicious drone would be landing. Yeah, so the prediction works by looking at tracks of drones and then taking into account a database of previous events. They can predict probabilities, of course, and it's not an absolute science, probabilities of where the landing spot could be. And this is really important for the law enforcement agencies, because it's one thing to see a drone and to detect it, but then you have to act, of course, and that's what the law enforcement agencies are all interested about. And the acting is done on the ground. You cannot just shoot it out of the air, so the landing site prediction is really important. My experience, I'm previously coordinating a project which is closely related to ALFA, which is the SafeShore project, which is also about the development of a drone detection system, but we're using different technologies. So in that framework I had to do a whole state-of-the-art of all the latest methodologies to detect drones and to counteract, let's say, the use of malicious drones. And I'm using that experience now to help the ALFA project in assessing the current state of the art and seeing to it that they are up to date with their developments. What I can say is that it's really difficult to integrate drone detection systems with classical maritime observation infrastructure, because this is, the classical infrastructure is based on large radar installations which are installed along the coastline to protect the whole coastline, whereas a drone detection system doesn't in general have the same kind of length, the same kind of range, so you have to mix different kinds of infrastructure, and that's not an easy task. So the ALFA project has a clear defined use case, which is really good because it helps to focus all the development, which is looking at the drugs trafficking between North of Africa and Portugal and Spain. But of course there are many other use cases that could be viable for the ALFA concept. Malicious drones can be used in all kinds of circumstances, like for example for delivering goods to prisons, like attacking critical infrastructure, like we have seen the problems the airports have with drones obstructing their operations. We also have search and rescue operations which are hindered by drones. This is a real problem. But it's not only these, let's say, intentional malicious use of drones. This is intentional malicious use of drones which is problematic. I often compare the situation to, let's say, the roads which we created, let's say, more or less 100 years ago. We invented cars, and we created roads and we created traffic rules, and now we created rules for these cars on the roads. And what we have now is a situation where we have the airspace which is opening up, in fact, to all kinds of public users, because the drones are coming available for everybody. And we have created rules. There are rules for the use of airspace for these drones, for the public as well. But the problem is that the police, the law enforcement agencies, they don't really have tools to police the laws. And that's really a problem. We don't have a flash camera for the air. And this is also something where ALFA could contribute, because if you have such kind of a flash camera, for the air. Then you can see there is a drone which shouldn't be there, and we can act on it. We can pay. You could be fined, for example, for flying where you couldn't fly. So economically speaking, the impact of ALFA could be quite big, because if you look at it now, the law enforcement agencies, border protection agencies, they have to go out every time when there is a kind of threat detected. So and this costs a lot. I mean, it is really a strain on their operations. Whereas the ALFA system, it can not only detect, but it also classifies the threats, and it can prioritize threats. And so they are quite sure that if they have to go out, it's for a real threat. And that's the big advantage of the system as well. And that would reduce their operational costs of really going into targets. And that would be a big cost reduction for them. For prediction of landing sites, the ALFA projects, first they detect the drone, then they classify the system, and then they will match, let's say, the track of the aerial system, be it a drone or an aircraft, with possible landing sites, which from past experience, also in terms of meteorological conditions, can that type of aircraft land on that type of landing site in this type of weather conditions. And yeah, that's a huge database, of course, which has to be sought through, because the land surface is large. But by doing so, they can predict really with quite great precision where the aircraft would land. So the threats for research projects like this is that, of course, when you start a project, you don't really know the business case until the end. Why is that? It's because you cannot totally assess how technology and technology affordableness more specifically will evolve in the future. ALFA is proposing a solution which is based on multiple sensing technologies, which are expensive, of course, which have a cost. And on the other hand, it is proposing a cost reduction. Now, both of these things will have to be in balance, and this is, of course, something which needs to be sought out in the future. Only the future will tell us whether the cost reduction will be enough to warrant the price of the system. And this is something which is related to sensing technology development, and this is out of the hands of the consortium, really. So it's a threat, but in general it's looking quite good. I don't have major worries about the project. I just have worries about the malicious use of drones and aircraft in general. ALFA is proposing a nice solution which will be capable of protecting areas, critical infrastructure, but that's one thing. Whether we will be able to deploy ALFA along the whole European borderlines, that's something totally different. I mean, that's probably not a viable business case. So there I do have my concerns. So that will be a question for the future, how we are going to protect the whole European borders against malicious drones, or all of European critical infrastructures against malicious drones, and there I'm seriously worried about, yes. The European Commission is working on solutions to keep the European border safe and secure, while allowing the European public to wander around safe within these borders.